Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be talking about the markets, the Fed, and burritos. So let's jump right in. So today's headline, Powell softens tone and says March rate hike size is not yet decided. And basically what they're saying now, as you can see here, Jerome Powell says data will determine the size of the next rate increase. So they're trying to say, hey, we may not be a 50. We'll just see how the data comes out, trying to calm everyone down again. Because day one, he was kind of freaking everyone out, sort of implying it's going to be a 50. However, if you ask around the market, the probability of a 50 basis point rate hike is much higher than it was before. We're sitting at around 77.9%. So, roughly 80% think that we're going to see a 50 basis point. And remember, that is different than before. The prior one was 25. So their change of direction a bit. The market today was mixed. So you guys can see this here. But overall at kind of flat, 0.04% negative. So we'll see how the market reacts tomorrow. I think in terms of markets, though, the big story is actually the treasury yields. You can see here, bonds. So what is it? 6-month at 5.25%, 12-month at 5.21, 2-year at 5.06, and then you got the 10-year just a bit under 4%, which is 3.98. Again, this is a yield inversion, which should signal recession. However, it depends who you ask. I just want to give you guys a couple different opinions. The fun strat guy, Tom Lee, went to my school. He's the perma bull. If there is ever a perma bull, this is Tom Lee, the perma bull. So I always laugh because he always comes up with the reason why the market should go up. So he says, the rallying stocks won't be swayed by a hawkish Powell. Okay, so he's saying, raising interest rates not going to hurt stocks, as falling inflation still points to a 20% gain for the market this year. So that's according to Tom Lee. We're a fun strat. Just want to give you guys different opinions. This is a different one as well. This is over on Fox News. The stock market will crash in 60 days. And that's according to Larry McDonald. And he puts out something, I think it's like called the Bear Report or something like that. So he tends to be more on the negative side. So I want to give you, a couple of different views. One guy who's always a bull and one guy who's always a bear. Also, too, you can take a look at this. Canada, which is really interesting, says Bank of Canada holds rates at 4.5%. Even as Fed pushes higher. And we had a few Canadian friends in the community, and I asked you guys about this because this sort of was the rumor on the street, that Canada is not going to be raising rates. It's actually quite interesting because oftentimes whatever the U.S. does in terms of central bank, other central banks around the world will also try to raise rates to defend their currency. But who knows, maybe Canada wants to devalue their currency. The other thing, too, is quite interesting. It was saying that Canada is worried about growth. Because the basic idea is that if your economy, you're worried about growth, if you're raising interest rates, it makes it harder for people essentially to borrow money and / expand, right? And so you don't necessarily want to be more restrictive with your policy. And so, we'll see. And this is sort of on the reverse end we talk about in comments. Because I read all these things and I do appreciate you guys, is that if the economy is indeed, say, heading toward a downswing and you're increasing rates, it kind of makes things worse. So there's no easy answer for this kind of thing. And the name of the game is try to predict the future. So when I get my crystal ball, perfectly working, I'll let you guys know. But yes, Canada, it looks like it is going to be not raising rates. Also, too, you can see this one here that we had a little economic data report from the Beige Book. And it wasn't like huge amount of data in there. I'll just read the highlight. You guys can read it here. It says, overall economic activity increased slightly, right? So not huge, slightly in early 2023. And then over it's saying here, however, the outlook going forward is less optimistic. Amid heightened uncertainty, contacts did not expect economic conditions to improve much in the months ahead. So it didn't really say a lot. So, you can say activity was a little bit up a bit. Was that probably January? And then the future doesn't look so great. Also, too, the JOLTS was the jobs report came out here, and it says here, U.S. job openings dropped to 10.8 million. But are still too high for the Fed. I do want to caution you with this one because we just saw an article just a couple days ago, and this was coming directly from the government, that they were saying even their own data is not so great on this one. The main reason is because when you send out surveys to employers, they weren't getting so many people sending them back, right? So they're just getting a low response rate, so that's why the data is not so great. However, there is something I want to show you, and this I thought was really interesting. This is sort of talking about different industries / sectors. We'll go through it and you get your guys' thoughts on this. So it says job openings decreased in construction. So job openings down in construction is what it said. And accommodation, food services, finance, and insurance, okay? Then they were saying vacancies rose in transportation, warehousing, utilities, non-durable goods, This would be like chemicals, clothing, food, and food processing. So that was kind of interesting. And then they were saying here, which was another one that was telling, the biggest decline in openings was at companies employing between 50 and 249 staff. And so it's basically the size of the companies that we're talking about here. And it says here, vacancies rose among businesses with less than 10 employees. So, this is actually pretty telling, because you're saying, okay, there are job openings, right? But like, do you want to work, say, for a company of 10 employees or less, like basically a small business? And the other thing too would be like, okay, they're saying here is interesting that there's a decrease in openings. For example, they put food services here. But the one thing I thought was interesting about that is the next few articles were sort of confirming what we've been talking about before, is that the food industry is still hiring. So this is where I told you guys that the JOLTS data is kind of wacky, because again, the response rate is low. So this is sort of why you would just focus on an individual company, where you can just ask them how many people you're hiring. And so this is sort of why when you get data from, like, say, Amazon, a Walmart, or in this example, we're using Chipotle, you may get a better sense of where things are going, because they literally will have, better numbers than the government in terms of their particular company. It won't necessarily be, everything that in the macro. However, it is one indicator because it's such a large employer. So this is Chipotle, and they're saying here, Chipotle seeks to hire 15,000 workers amid tech layoffs, and they have more than 100,000 workers. And I was reading, I think they have 3,000 locations, what it said. Yeah. So they're pretty big chain, and so they're actually hiring. And the one thing I was thinking about with Chipotle, and this would be Walmart as well, when you're struggling to find people, you have to raise wages. Basically, you're like, hey, we'll pay you, $15 an hour, and then people are like, nah, I'm not coming for 15. Okay, how about 17? Nah, I'm okay. How about 25? Okay, I'm coming in, right? So the more you raise wages, the more easier it is to get workers. However, then it makes inflation sticky. So this is the challenge that we're in right now. And the other thing too is kind of interesting is this was also regarding restaurants. You read the headlines. 3 years after COVID hit, restaurants are still desperate for workers, right? And they're saying here about 60% of establishments are having trouble getting workers. And this is some of the data on this here. So here, 62% of these places are understaffed. So this is like according to the National Restaurant Association. 92% of operators, they're saying that food costs are higher. Thought that was interesting. And then the other big numbers in here, and you can read all these numbers for yourself. You can pause the video, but the basic gist of it is they're saying that people are ordering takeout more, ordering delivery more. And that's the basic gist of these numbers. And I'd be curious if you guys are sort of experiencing that. I can tell you, during the pandemic, true story, I was ordering lots and lots of Chipotle. So that's what it was. This is the way that I remember the way they structured it. Like you had to order, it was like 2 burritos, because if you order 1, you'd have to pay a delivery fee. But if you order 2, over a certain amount, you wouldn't, so et cetera. And then you just get used to doing that. And it was like, at that time, like comparing, say Chipotle to the grocery store, it was like roughly around the same price at that time. So today, I don't know what the prices are at Chipotle, but curious if you guys are ordering more than before. This is an interesting one as well. They were comparing vacancies or job openings in restaurants compared to the rest of other sectors. So the yellow line here is like other sectors around here is say vacancies, but then here is restaurants just have a lot of openings. You guys can see right there. And also too, this is sort of like showing that part of it is during the pandemic, restaurant revenues were down. So this is 2020. So this is this a trillion? Restaurant industry revenue may hit 1 trillion this year, right? So this should be that should be in the billions then, right? So this would be 678 billion. That should be what it is. And then right. And then 2023 is at 997 billion in terms of I think this is what revenue or sales. Revenue. And so saying it'd be nearly 1 trillion. But you can generally see that because basically all the workers were fired or didn't have work during 2020, and they're trying to hire them all back. And moreover, it just seems like the revenue is increasing. Now, do be aware though, when you talk about revenue increasing, like for example, remember the price of everything is increasing. So yes, it's going to look like revenue is increasing. However, you'd actually want to look at the amount of how many burritos are being sold. So I don't have any numbers on like how many burritos that Chipotle is selling in particular, but I just wanted to point that out that for these kind of figures, when you do look at this, it doesn't mean that Chipotle is going to be necessarily making more money or restaurants are making more money per se, but more money is coming in because prices are higher. And also too, you can put that together with there are more deliveries. So I just want to point that out. The other thing too is interesting is I was thinking about this, and I'm sure you guys know this intuitively. A lot of these restaurant work or like, hotels and stuff like that would hire undocumented workers. You could also say illegal aliens if you want to use that word as well. They're kind of roughly the same thing. That's a political determination of what word you use. However, point being though, I just did a quick Google. Are there undocumented workers at Chipotle? This one example. Evidently in the past there were investigations, this kind of thing, and it sounds like that their standards of checking paperwork, that was a thing. Today, who knows? I honestly just don't know. And I don't think you could easily Google that because this kind of data is harder to get. I'm sure you guys understand this. But my understanding of the situation in USA is with the pandemic, immigration was definitely slowed. And I think, essentially, if you can't get cheap workers, 'cause that's essentially what it is, right? People crossing the border or any number of things, you guys understand this, or even say using child labor, any number of ways that you're paying someone for on the cheap, then, that keeps costs down. But then let's say you don't have access to said cheap workers and you're paying only local people, that would drive wages up, right? So I think this is a very real thing that people don't talk enough about just because it's a politically charged issue. But I'm just talking about reality, right? I've lived in multiple states in USA, and it's a real thing. And I think, for example, one of the industries that is definitely affected by these kind of things is construction industry. There's a lot of migrant workers that work in that industry. So I just wanted to share that. So I don't know, and I'd be curious your guys' thoughts on that. If you feel like in your neck of the woods you've seen any changes in the amount of migrant/undocumented workers that are working at restaurants, construction, things of that nature. I think it's worth mentioning. The other thing too is this is an interesting one. Do you want to work at service industries or not? Like, do you, even if they pay enough, would you want to work at, say, Chipotle? Now, read the headline of this one here. It says, as customer problems hit a record high, more people seek revenge. So, true story. So the basic gist was that many consumers / customers in the USA are disappointed with the service that they receive and then want to seek revenge on said company, right? So this would be an example like, you feel like that Spirit or Southwest really, screwed you over on your plane tickets, and you get mad and you want to get revenge. And so how would you do that? You could, yell at the employees and stuff like that, or you could post a bunch of negative things about the company on social media. So America's a tough place to work, man. People are yelling at you and posting, shaming you on social media. So read the headlines on this. It's kind of interesting. Or the more details. So it says here, Americans are encountering more problems with companies, products, and services than ever before. A higher proportion of them are actively seeking revenge. So USA is the country of revenge, evidently, when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it says here, some 74% of the 1,000 consumers surveyed said they had experienced a product or service problem in the past year, right? So you're experiencing more problems with the quality of your service, right? And then that is up from 66%. And then that was in 2020. And then I guess people complained about stuff or said that they had bad experiences. That was 56% in 2017. So, certainly, and then the first time we did this was like 32% in 76. So certainly, in my opinion, so I'm in Korea. I feel like customer service is way better here by far. I would say the same with Japan as well. It depends on which country you go. And I'm trying to think about this one. Like, would I consider European customer service better than U.S. customer service? That's up for debate. And for people who have been traveling to Europe recently, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But, just sort of my experiences in many big cities in the USA, you go into a Walgreens or a CVS or whatever, fast food, and just customer service is not that great. Either people are just kind of looking at their phones, ignoring the customers, or maybe slow, or people just look unhappy. I don't know how else to explain it. If that's the only kind of customer service you've ever seen in your whole life, you think that's normal. But I'm just saying, I've visited other places and everything's different. It's hard to explain. It is like my opinion. I just feel like customer service has gone down in USA over the years. So that's just my opinion on that one. So love to hear you guys' one on that as well. And then this is saying here that even not just my opinion, but either surveyed other people, they're saying there are more problems than before. Now they're saying here, this is sort of where the data of the revenge thing comes in. Percentage of consumers who have taken action to settle a score against a company through measures such as pestering or public shaming in person or online has tripled to 9% from 3%. So essentially what it is that, more problems, more complaints. And then it says here, the average percentage of customers seeking revenge between 2003 and 2017 was 17%. So I guess we're still off the high of how many people seek revenge. Because it's saying here, I guess the average 17, so we're at 9. So you could actually reverse the headline and say, hey, things are getting better because we're definitely downtrend from where we were. But, it depends on how you want to look at it. Is it the glass half full or glass half empty kind of thing? I'd love to hear your thoughts on any one of these stories. What do you think about the projections of a 50 basis point rate hike? And I'd love to hear your thoughts about the whole restaurant industry thing. I think that's always a fun one to talk about. So thanks again for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next video.